Do you need a survey? Did you find this? Okay. Okay. There's that. So don't put your name on the survey, just, you don't fill it out, but don't put your name on it. What did you guess from my part? It's a good guess. Not correct, but it's a good guess. What's that? See, I can't respond to that because I might give you a hint. You gotta hold a straight face. I'll give you a few more minutes with that survey. The thing is, there might be somebody coming from physics yet, you know what I mean? The campus, the 10 minutes doesn't cut it anymore, but like I always say, the people that make the rules don't have to live by the rules. The people in Hovde say 10 minutes, but they never have to run between buildings in 10 minutes. So it's kind of like, it grates on me that the people that are making the rules don't live by the rules, because you would know that 10 minutes doesn't cut it. But I'll give you a couple more minutes and then I'll start slowly. Okay, I think we'll start, even if you're not done with the survey, you can do it before we leave here today. We have a power hour, and what that means is we start about 4:30, but because, you know, the campus is so big, I never really start at 4:30, you know what I mean? Probably closer to 4:35, because I know what it is like running every class. And what's kind of neat is I'm very efficient. Tuesday and Thursdays, I come here about noon on Tuesday, and on Thursday it's closer to 2:30, and I give lectures until 5:45. So that's really something, because I need my coffee. And if I look a little dehydrated sometime, bring me a bottle of water, will you? Because like blah, blah, blah. Because, you know, when you talk, you give off moisture. But I do want to introduce myself first and then talk about the class. Hopefully you're here for ANSI 230. And I'm using the microphone because that seems to project better, and then when somebody asks a question, then I can repeat the question. If you're ever any place and people are asking questions from the audience, and if you're up here presenting, always repeat it. Have you noticed on the news, like a lot of those question and answers periods they have, you'll hear the audience, somebody in the audience ask a question, and the speaker up front doesn't repeat the question. It's like, well, don't want to talk about that. But the rest of us in the audience don't even know what the question was. I was like, really, like, you guys don't know, you know, like some of those police reports where the press is asking questions, but the person doesn't repeat it, so everybody can hear it. They just say the answer. Anyway. So I'm always going to try to repeat the question because some of us can hear better than others. You know, there's more rattling, whatever. So always, if I start answering and not repeating the question, say, what was the question again? Just help me a little bit. So we're here for ANSI 230. The first thing you know, and hopefully you're taking notes, because anything I say should and can show up in your lab reports. I want to make that clear from the get-go. This is not syllabus week, okay? I've been at college long enough that I know that if I promote learning from the day one, it helps people. There's 8,000 freshmen that started this fall, and you know what? They're not learning the right way. They're going to class and maybe get a PowerPoint handed out, and they're going to paint some words. Do you know that's negative learning? It is. It's been proven. PowerPoints are decreasing people's learning, and if you ever want me to get into that, I will. The more you do, the more you'll learn, the more you'll retain it, and the farther you go. Because who's going to hand you stuff when you get out of college? Nobody. Not a soul. Okay? I went to college 10 years. I loved it so much. Look, I'm still at college. I'll move this down a little bit so you can see me. See how this is doing? I'm like this. Okay, so I went to college 10 years, and every year I enjoyed it more and said I never want to leave. And lo and behold, I have never left college. Where else are you going to get to interact with such wonderful people and have your own schedule? I don't punch a clock. I really don't have a boss. And I can teach this class any damn way I want to the best of my ability. That's a lot of fun. I've dissected more animals than you've ever seen. I was lucky when I was an undergraduate, started, taking classes at hands-on. When I was at my master's degree, I was teaching repro labs, PhD teaching labs, and all my graduate work, my mentors were into experimental surgery. So I've been doing surgery forever. Do you know of anybody that's ever taken the ovaries up out of the sheet, not cut them off, and then electrocauterize the follicles and then put them back in? That's experimental surgery. Nobody's ever does that. I know how to count the number of corpora lutea on a sheet, or this is goats, through a laparoscope. It's like a little tube that you go into the body cavity. It's got a light at the end. 300 every fall. Dissected all kinds of animals. Yesterday we got pregnant cats in for you guys. They're not alive, they're preserved. But you're going to be dissecting pregnant cats, and I'm going to tell you how fruitful that can be, because there's so many things you can do, and I want you to write this in your notes right now. During labs, I always want to ask myself, what can I measure? What can I weigh? What can I count? What can I take a picture of? Because these are not going to be ordinary lab reports. These are things that you're going to accumulate over time, and you're going to talk about that pregnant uterus in the cat. How many embryos were in the left horn? How many were in the right? Did it correspond to the ovaries? Is there transuterine migration? And then you got the whole other cat, the whole other parts of the cat to look at. We'll talk about this. It's going to be interesting because you know how usually in labs you go in and the instructor has the same instructions for everybody? Remember, I do things differently? We're going to have some people dissect the cat and then divvy out the heart, the pancreas, whatever, so you can spend time on that organ, and you're going to start your lab report. Some will have a lab report on renal function earlier than somebody else, but at the end we'll all be done, and we're going to talk about how many labs are required topics, and then some that are up to you. Maybe you're a person that really likes the stomach. So then you can do more with the stomach than most people. You know, the stomach is part of the GI tract, and you should know how long the GI tract is, from the cranial aspect of the stomach all the way to the anal opening. Stretch it out, dissect it, measure it. How many feet is it? Is it longer than the animal? You better believe it. You could put the digestive tract spread out and then put a cat next to it and take a picture of it. So what you're going to do is measure, weigh, count, pictures, and that's all going into your lab reports. You're not just going to dissect and say, that's nice, done. Every animal we're going to use to the max. So pregnant rats, that's easy. Pregnant cats, a little harder. Then we have some pigs. But they're all preserved, they're not frozen, because here's the lesson to take home. Frozen tissue doesn't dissect well. It gets mushy fast. I've learned that long ago, but I still wanted to try it with 2 placentas, so don't tell my wife. I had 2 cow placentas in the freezer. Finally got around to thawing them, and it was kind of a mistake, because I should have, well, one of my past students was working at the big dairy at Fair Oaks. She was calving out every day. She goes, Rod, I got 2 placentas for you. I know how you like that stuff. It's true. I said, oh yeah, bring them down to me. That'd be great. And then I froze them because I didn't have time to work on them. But what happened was the outer edge thawed, and then it started to rot before even the inner part thawed. So it was like rotting, not thawed. And by the time the whole thing was thawed that you could spread it out, it wasn't working well. So that's a take-home message. If you ever work with a placenta, try to do it before it's frozen. Although there's some, you know, a cow is different because there's so much tissue there. That logic doesn't really work with dogs and cats because it's not bad. Because so the pregnant cats, each fetus has a placenta. And you'll still be able to get a lot of good stuff out of it. It's just when the tissue gets so big, freezing doesn't work very well. So anyway, I was lucky to always have mentors that were doing surgery. I was lucky that I was someplace where I could also volunteer to help other people. And so I look back and I wouldn't change any of it. I mean, but I was active, I was doing things, I was asking questions. I wasn't sitting back going, no, you do it, I'll stay here. And that's one take-home lesson that I want to give you. You're in charge of your destiny. And unfortunately, at big universities, you can be very quiet and sit in the corner and no one's going to talk to you. And you're going to learn the minimum. And it's poetic. If you learn the minimum, you'll probably get a minimum job. I'm just saying, after thousands of people I've seen, I've interviewed people, and after the 8th one, if they've all done minimum, I can't tell them the difference. I can't remember the first person because all the answers were the same. Blur together. Do something distinctive. So I just typed in Rod Ulrich anatomy cattle, and I just want to explain some of these pictures just as a way to introduce myself. Okay, and then we'll talk about the course and the syllabus and where's the contact material. There's Onyx, 180 pounds. Bella, 160. I'm an expert at keeping big dogs, and I'm an expert at keeping big dogs cool, because they can die in the heat. Anything over 70, these guys started getting hot. 70. A Chihuahua is cold at 70. So what a difference, right? Here's one of my articles that I wrote about cystic ovaries. I'm the only person you'll ever know that made cystic ovaries in cows. I made cow ovaries become cystic. And then I wrote an article about, if they become normal, they're going to ovulate. And if it's abnormal, see, this diameter is bigger. So that's really what a cystic ovary is, or cystic follicles, where the follicle becomes larger in diameter than normal. And you should know that in every species, we know the diameter of the normal follicle. Cattle, the biggest follicles, normal, get to be 2.5 centimeters in diameter. And then they're going to ovulate. 1 egg per 1 follicle. Every follicle has 1 egg. If they become abnormal, it's more than 2.5 centimeters, and the egg is disintegrated. The egg is not going to be fertilized. There's from a video I made on anatomical planes. There's the big dog before he grew up. I'm going to see if, this is like I wonder if I'm not sure if I can see this one. Get this larger. Okay, I'm going to read it a little bit. This little thing here, let's see, see if I can get it started. Sorry about the sound. Okay, it's there someplace, but I'm not going to waste my time. It's just a little thing about how we learn, and somebody wrote this up, and it's not absolutely true, but let me read a couple things. It says we learn 10% of what we read, 20% of what we hear, 30% of what we see, so it's read, hear, see, 50 of what we see and hear. The point is, as you go on and become more involved, you learn more. That's the bottom line. And so it's like 70% of what we, what's that say? Discuss, I think, of what we experience, and then what we teach others. So there's this Chinese proverb that basically says to teach is to learn twice. And that's a beautiful thing. So if somebody's an undergraduate and they end up being a TA for a course, that's a positive, that's a selling point for you, because if you have to teach something, you had to organize it up here, and it's not a PowerPoint on a page. PowerPoints, unless you're the one making them, doesn't help you organize the material. The more you organize the material, the more you retain it, and the more you can learn more. Here's an example. When I was a graduate student, Phil Jacques, who was a faculty member over at the University of Illinois, would go to these meetings. And when you're in graduate school and a scientist and making publications, you go to these meetings where people present their topic. Like, I can make a cow that has no ovaries come into heat. And the best farmer could never distinguish between my cows that don't have ovaries that are in heat and a regular cow in heat. So you talk about what you did. Phil Jacques did swine physiology. And when he would go to these meetings and these meeting rooms, he always sat up front. He was in the front row. The guy that wrote the book, he literally wrote the book on swine physiology. He's in the front row. Who in the audience is asking the most questions? Phil Jacques. And then after a few years, it dawned on me, wow, now I know how he does it. He's a sponge for knowledge. He's not afraid to ask questions because he knows it's to his benefit. And he's always up front because that's less distraction. He was incredible, and swine physiologist. Always up front, had done so many things. It wasn't even funny how much he had done. Anyway, I finally figured out, okay, why is he the smartest one? He's in front, asking the most questions. Because when you ask questions, then you fill in little missing parts for your knowledge. And if I could tell all those freshmen out there that started this week, ask questions, but they're not going to ask questions. When you get in that big biology room, it's a little overwhelming and you're not going to ask questions. So you're kind of almost being trained not to ask questions. And if the instructor gives you PowerPoint, then you're decreasing your learning there. And so now pretty soon we're losing freshmen because they didn't learn anything. So anyway, we had cats, those exotic cats that can come to class. Anyway, I'm going to leave that one. Maybe one more thing here. Let's see. I was thinking of popping up different topics. There's those cystic ovaries again. There's that. It's all kind of the same. Anyway, dogs, cats, horses. Let's just stop that. Then we'll go back to here. And then a lot of you have not had me in class before, so you should know that I have a website, Aug23.com. And it's different than Brightspace. Because this website I run myself, and I have 3 websites. They're all redundant. So if one's in Florida, if that building floods, there's 2 other places to go. One's in Canada and one's in Utah. What happens to you guys if Brightspace is down? Do you have an alternative to go? No. There's one spot. If Brightspace is down for 12 hours, it's down for 12 hours. I can't afford that. Why? I have 3 classes. If I have an exam coming for class tomorrow, if one website's down, I just say go to another one. And I'll show you that on the syllabus. The other 2 sometimes maybe are a day behind because, I have to FTP files. And here's another thing, I run my own website. You don't have to have a password to get in. For Brightspace, you need a password. So we use Brightspace for uploading material, but all the educational material I make, I want everybody in the world to see it. So then if you look at recent visitors, there's people from all over coming to the website. And what's kind of interesting, I get questions every day from people I don't know. And I'll say, well, if I was a pet owner, I would do this, and sometimes I say, ask your local veterinarian. I'm a PhD, I'm not a licensed veterinarian, but I've done all kinds of physiology stuff, so I can answer things about taking ovaries out of sheep. I can do that blindfolded, right? Dissecting pig uteruses, easy. So anyway, a lot of people come to things, and then for our website, you go to courses. Of course, you can read other things, like if you go to the blog, I often talk about how I make my own dog food, and I gotta add some pictures, but I usually have some pictures of the dog food. There's what the dogs ate. Celery, broccoli, tomato, that might be, that's a sweet potato, some beef, zucchini. That's dog food. Here's some more. Beans, carrots, probably chicken, cranberry. At our house, we never have any leftovers. It's always fed to the dogs. So my wife will go, what's in that container there? I'll go, well, we ate it a couple days ago. It's going to go to the dogs now. So I never waste anything. Dogs. There's only a few things I never feed dogs. Grapes and raisins. It's hard to say how many I don't, because they get most of everything. Even a little garlic. A little garlic, dogs love. Some places will say no garlic for dog, no, no. Grapes and raisins, I said, gosh, I can't think of anything that's bad right now. Anyway, so I make my own dog food. I sometimes show pictures. I've got some pictures I should be putting up. There's rice, there's peas, carrots, pasta, you name it. Okay, so we go to courses, physiology, that's our course here. I don't put the numbers down because the numbers don't mean anything to people around the world. It's the topic that means something. So physiology, domestic animals. As soon as the cows get out of the way, come on, come on. Sometime I'll have to tell you stories about how cows stole an orange of mine. One time I was eating an orange and I put it down on a windowsill and came back and it was gone. Anyway, physiology. So then there's a syllabus, which we're not going to read totally through, but I'm going to give you some, go to it and show you how points are earned. But then there's these learning resources like antonyms that are like anatomy, physiology antonyms, physiology math questions. You can write this down now. 7% of the body weight is blood weight. You should know how to calculate that out. So if I say the calf weighs 500 pounds, how many pounds of blood does it have in it? And the answer is 35 pounds, right? 7%, 500 pounds, 35 pounds of blood. And sometimes it's good to know the blood volume of an animal, so then sometimes you can estimate how much they lost. And if you know it's 10% or less, you don't do anything for the animal. You don't give it IV or anything. You can easily lose 10%. And in the human population, it's very interesting about ambulance drivers and medics and giving IV fluids at the accident scene. And sometimes you should look that up. But in some cases, it's bad to give a person that's bleeding extra fluid. And you might say, why is that? Well, when you lose blood, fluid, the body has a couple mechanisms. The spleen contracts because the spleen stores blood. So the spleen can give you blood back. Plus, all your veins constrict, and you have less blood volume needed for the same amount of pressure. So then when you get the ambulance here, and they're, first of all, maybe some of you have never taken a blood sample from a human, but when I was at IU med school, every morning I took my own blood sample at the kitchen table, right here, because I was doing with white blood cells at the med school. But have you ever seen somebody try it and poke, 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 poke? How many have had that experience where somebody's poking you and getting your hematoma? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Well, for some accident victims, it's even harder to get a venipuncture. So there's a thought that they're wasting a lot of time trying to hook up the IV to you. Sometimes it's called grab and go. Grab the accident victim and get to the hospital. Because you're going to waste a lot of time sometimes, and sometimes they don't need the fluid. Sometimes they've already adjusted to the lower volume. Now that's not the case if they've cut a femoral artery and there's a lot of blood. They need fluid right now. But they did some studies did this study. Think of this. Every other ambulance run, they did IV fluid, and then every other one they didn't. And they did that for a year. Do you know what? The survival rate was better with the ones that didn't get any fluid. So see how controversial that can be? It seems like logic. Okay, the animal's bleeding, I'm going to give it fluid. No, there's adjustments that are made, especially the vasoconstriction. And now if vasoconstriction has occurred and you're going to put too much fluid in. So there's a thing called grab and go. Stop, pick up the accident victim and get to the hospital as soon as possible, because that's where the experts are. And if you ever live in a city, find out the best trauma hospital. And if you ever get shot, stabbed, or in an accident, go to that one. Because those people deal with it every day. You don't want to go to some small hospital that hasn't seen an accident victim for a month. You want the physicians and the nurses that see them every day. because they know what to do with you. Just a little hint. But the grab and go is a good example. In these big cities, after a year, they found out the survival rate was better with the ones they didn't do IV fluid. Of course, there's going to be exceptions, right? But they just did this every other one and found out that grab them and go, because you've seen people poke too much, and they're poking, and they got to go to the other arm, and you're wasting time. If you grabbed and went, you'd probably be at the experts by the time you got an IV in. So anyway, there's all kinds of things here to help you learn, because I always think people should learn for their career and beyond, not just the next assignment. You know, you should be looking for the long run. What can help me in my long run career? And so we have reading for this week. And that brings up the point, we don't have lab this week for a couple of reasons. One is people can still add the class till next Monday at 5. So if we had a full-fledged lab tomorrow, and then two people come in and say, I missed the lab, what can I do? Now I've got to explain to them all, you know, what we did. Well, I don't have time. This is my third lecture. My first lecture of the day was 30 people in here. Then the second one was 60. Now I've got 90. I do that Tuesday and Thursday, but it's efficient. I just stand up here and talk. But I answer questions, and if you're an active learner, you'll be asking me a lot of questions, right? So no lab tomorrow, but then the next week we'll have a lab. And I know you've been getting emails from me. If you don't have a lab coat, if you can chase one up, great. Not every lab is wet. Like, we'll do some histology. Well, there's screens, and we'll show you, you know, how to do histological things. But when we do the pregnant cats, you know, you'll need some cover and hopefully some safety glasses if you can borrow. You know, everybody has those from chemistry, but maybe they lost them. But if you can beg, borrow, and steal, so much the better. But we'll deal with that. I know, like Amazon, you can get 12 of those safety glasses for $12, $13. So, you know, you could get a bunch of people together and order one box and whatever. It's just good to have things safety. And that's the other thing about this lab. I'm going to show you how to be so careful. And one thing, here's a couple rules for rods. Rules. Never be in a hurry. If you're ever in a lab and I see somebody's in a hurry, they leave. They're asked to leave. You know, maybe you're trying to finish it fast. You can't learn that way. You've got to go slow and ask people. And the other thing we're going to be doing is somewhere through the lab, we're always going to stop and walk around and see what other people found. What did you find? Oh, that's different than mine. Rather than just looking at our own. But in the end, you're going to be able to build a lab report that you're going to upload in Brightspace. And there's going to be 5 sections to the lab. And I think I sent that out, but I've got to look at it again. But there's really 5 sections. You're going to do microscopic anatomy on some topic. That's also called histology. Then you're going to have a section of macroscopic anatomy, otherwise called gross anatomy. Then you're going to have a section on physiology, like let's say kidney. So you're going to have microscopic anatomy of the kidney, macroscopic anatomy of the kidney, then you're going to do physiology of the kidney, and then you're going to have a section on pathophysiology of the kidney. What can go wrong? And then there's going to be like a 5th section of your choice. What do you want? Maybe there's something you want to concentrate on that topic. Okay? And we'll be explaining that enough other places. But then there's reading. Well, let me go to the syllabus before I do the reading. So you should know why we're doing the reading. So there's that syllabus there. And here's the 3 websites. RodAlrich.com is the main one, but then there's RodAlrich2.com and RodAlrichBraveHost.com. So those are in different states. And then, because I have to FTP files to different ones, RodAlrich.com is always the most accurate. But if that goes down, I can, in the RodAlrich2 is pretty accurate, but it might be a day behind, so I can always just upload files. You know, I've got backups all over the place. So then there's no book to buy because books are terribly expensive. Like, what's that biology book? The 110, 111 biology, how much is that? Cost?
140 just for the online.
What's that?
140 just for the online.
140 online. Isn't it over $200 if you do the printed one?
It's like 230.
230. See, I used to review those books, and I got paid, I think it was $50 a chapter or $100 a chapter. But I always felt conflicted because those biology books aren't really freshman biology books, because the competition have made them big. Because there's like 4 or 5 main publishers. So every time a publisher inserts a new chapter in their book, the other ones have to also, right, to be competitive. And they went from here to here to here to here to here. Crazy. And I can show you how students could buy, like the freshmen could buy one book and share it with 12 people. How do you do that? Take a straight edge razor and cut all the pages out of the book. Then go back and bind them by half chapters or chapters. Bill, you get the half chapter. Mary, here's another one. We all have to read in 2 days and I'm going to switch over. One book for 12 people or whatever. Nothing says you shouldn't copy them because that's infringement, but you can cut up a book and share chapters, right? There's nothing illegal about that. In fact, I'm going to show you how to do that with anatomy books here. Straight edge razor, zoom, zoom. I've got some anatomy books worth hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and you can take pictures of them for your lab reports. So anyway, there's all kinds of topics, and we're going to figure out which are some core topics, like a lab report that you have to have. Like, let's say on nephrology, that's the kidney. So you're going to have a lab report on that, and you're going to gather stuff about the kidney from the cat, the rat, the pig. We've got all those animals. You're not going to do it all in one day, but you're going to gather it in your notes, and then when you write a lab report, you've got pictures on your phone of the pig kidney. You've got pictures on your phone from the cat kidney, the rat kidney, right? And maybe you can get some from the internet for some of your stuff, you know. But be prepared to take a lot of pictures. And those phones do a great job, don't they? Most of those phones are terrific. And then you can share pictures. Maybe your phone doesn't take a great picture, or the people next to you got a better picture of the cat kidney. Borrow their picture. Anyway, there's these topics. For sure, we'll be doing therio, that's reproduction. We'll probably do female reproduction separate from male reproduction because we're doing those pregnant cats, and there's all kinds of stuff there. Gastroenterology, you know, that's the GI tract. Anyway, we go on and on. Here we are. We're meeting in this room. The labs are Wednesdays, but tomorrow don't come to the lab. We're not doing anything for the labs, okay? So then what do? Assessments of learning. That's where what you're learning, even from today, comes on, right? In your notes that you write, nephrology is the study of the kidney, right? Anyway, in your there's 4 online quizzes, or 4 online exams, sorry. And they're due all, I wrote down dates, like to make myself write down some dates. And we'll be practicing them, but it's going to be called Fill in the Paragraph. And when I get done here a little bit, I'm going to go back to that. So remind me, I'm going to show them fill in the paragraph, okay? But you guys can read that. You're going to submit it to Brightspace, and it's going to be scanned by Turnitin, which is a plagiarism. It's going to say, it's going to tell us, all of me and you, if they've seen it before, okay? So you got to be careful about that. You can study with whoever, but then when you write the answers to the exams, do them yourself. Because even if you study with somebody, you're not going to write the same. You have different vocabulary. You know, it's not going to come out the same. Guarantee you. If you do the exam together, you'll have phrases that are the same, and it's going to show up. Because the thing is very smart. Like, let's say 2 people, let's say Jane and Mary are going to submit at the same time. It won't scan both of them. It'll scan one, and it'll wait until that one's done to do the next one. It's pretty smart. And then it stores whatever it did forever. So people 2 years from now might submit the same thing, it's gonna blow up and say, I've seen this before. So the best way to do it is yourself, right, being active, sitting down and writing the answers. And I call it fill in the paragraph, I'll show you what that's like. It's kind of like fill in the blank, but you don't have blanks to fill in, you have a paragraph to fill in. And does it take some cognitive ability? Yes. But don't you want cognitive ability when you go out in the real world, where there's nobody telling you what to do? I'm going for the long run. I'm not going for this semester for you. I'm going for the long run. So then there's lab reports. And I'll give you, I did send out an example. And it's going to be kind of funky because not everybody comes in and does kidney. Somebody is going to be designated to dissect a cat and divvy out the parts to partners. And then somebody might dissect a pig and divvy out parts. So we're going to accumulate knowledge over time, but you should always write things down, right? And I did say that, you're going to measure, you're going to weigh, you're going to count, all that kind of thing. And then you can see the grades are plus or minus. I like the plus or minus system because if somebody's got a high B, you can give them that decimal better than, let's say a high B is B plus, so it's 3.3 rather than 3, you know what I mean? So I like that it shows where you're at a little better than just the plain 4, 3, 2, 1, which is like the middle column here. I like that somebody can get a 3.3 rather than a 3. Or if you're really lower than the 3, you know, it's poetic, you get 2.7, right? Anybody have any questions on the syllabus? So, Brightspace is used to upload tests, which we're going to do here in a second, upload lab reports, but they're going to be built. Lab reports are going to be built over time. And that's something to get used to. It's not like at the end of the week I should do this lab report. So that takes a little bit of thinking, but you can accumulate more information if you spread out studying kidney over time. And you can also then study heart at the same time, right? Different notes, different pictures, different scales to weigh things, things like that. So any questions before I stop the syllabus here and go to the fill in the paragraph? Okay, so here's what fill in the paragraph is. And what I'll do is I will probably give you a couple practice ones. So we've been talking about the kidney. So let me just start up Word and show you what the question will be. So I'm not sure exactly how many questions we'll have per exam, maybe about 4. Well, see, if I had 5 paragraphs at 20 each, 20 points each, something like that. It's either going to be 4 or 5 paragraphs. But you don't do them here, you do them at home, and you do them over time. It's not like you're going to have 2 hours to do it. You can have like a week. So you can talk about it, you can think about it, and do your best job. But always remember, do your own work, because Turnitin is going to read it. And you got to have 20 or less on the similarity score. So here it is. So we're going to say, create a paragraph, and I could say physiological paragraph. Maybe I do on the regular one. Create a paragraph on renal physiology, and I might say and anatomy. I'm going to phrase it so if you you can think of the broad way, everything you learned in the class about the kidney. Okay, I'll have something like that. Create a paragraph on renal physiology. I'll just leave it like that for now. That incorporates the following terms, but sometimes there's a number there, terms, items. Because if I have a number, and I'll show you an example, sometimes you can't call a number a term. You know what I mean? Like, what did I say? 7% of the body weight is blood weight. The 7, I'll put that down here. Well, is that a term or is it an item? Whatever, it doesn't matter. Create a paragraph on renal physiology that incorporates the following terms, items. So then what happens is below here are going to be things about the kidney, words, like 10. Then knowing what you learned about in the lab and in the class about renal physiology, you're going to write a paragraph. Will everyone's be different? Yes, that's the beauty of it. There's not one right answer. And if you can bring in knowledge from another course, so be it. Okay? Yep.
Are we gonna have rubrics for the exams?
Not really, because I'm going to tell you right now, you know, the terms. If you write a paragraph that you're teaching somebody, say aim it for a senior in high school, a freshman in college. The rubric, I think, would lead you astray. You're just going to write a paragraph that could be found in a biology book. And that would be, you know, a good judgment right there. Did you use the terms in a meaningful way that reflect what the class had, or outside the class, that's got to be correct though, right? You know, you can include something from another class, but make sure it's correct. So questions are wonderful, yes.
But do you want the paragraph from a very like medical and basic, like this is what it looks like, or do you want it to be a little bit more personal, like adding like anecdotes or stories to help like move?
I keep it straight science.
Okay.
Unless there's something like, I had a dog with this and this is what happened to the dog. But no, I keep it as straight science as I could, reflecting the class material. Reading, labs, getting the whole ball of wax into a story.
If we get the information here from a book or from your webpage, do we have to put an in-text citation?
No, never cite it. That wastes my time. I want to read a science paragraph. I don't care where it came from. Remember, you might be taking another class that you're studying the kidney too, and if you bring it in here, I know about it. I'm going to say, wow, that's neat. You told us something that we didn't learn in this class, but you've learned it. So all prior knowledge is acceptable. But the thing is going to be reflected of this course. So if all your prior knowledge is third grade material, and that's all you do for the paragraph, then you're not going to get a good grade, right? It's going to be reflective of this material, and if you have things to add, so be it. But if they're all third grade level, right, that's prior knowledge, but it's not appropriate. You know what I mean?
Yes.
What is the appropriate length of the paragraph?
Good question. I would say, you know, 5 to 7 sentences. And sometimes the first sentence is good to have like a topic, like, you know, a topic. And I can maybe find you a link of how to write a good paragraph. But a paragraph is a little story that stands alone. Yeah. And it's good to do it this way rather than ABCD. You're not going to do ABCD out in the real world. You're going to be explaining things. You're going to write things down. Yeah. So create a paragraph on renal physiology that incorporates the following terms. So you're going to use these terms. So let me put 7 down and go over. And somebody might say, 7? Well, you can start by saying, you know, gee, the kidneys filter blood. And by the way, 7% of the body weight is blood. See how you could do that? Now you've got one already used. 2. What can I do with 2?
There are 2 kidneys.
Here's what, I'm going to change it. She said, there are 2 kidneys. Do you know that's a false statement in some animals? So you could say, see, I'm going to be like a politician. Most animals have 2 kidneys. It's like most of the time I vote Republican, or most of the time I vote, you know what I mean. I'm an independent, basically. I think, do you know what you call 300 politicians at the bottom of the ocean? A good start. I learned that from a lawyer. He said, what do you call 300 lawyers at the bottom of the ocean? I go, what? And I go, well, a good start. And then what's the difference between finding a dead lawyer on the road that's been run over and a dead snake? The snake has skid marks in front of it. Okay, I'm gonna stop. Okay, I'll just do a couple and then I'll go back to them. And maybe, and so super is a prefix in this case. When you have that hyphen, that means it should be combined with something else. Okay, so 7% of the body weight is blood weight, and the kidneys filter blood. There's 2 kidneys usually, but 2 could be used in different ways. There are 2 ureters. Ureters are the tube that lead urine from the kidney to the bladder, one on each side. There's usually 2 ureters, but I can show you a radiograph where somebody has 4 ureters. That's the other thing you should know about anatomy. Don't get too cocksure that you know everything, because if you ever become a surgeon, you've got to do this in your mind. If I run into something weird, I'm not going to cut it until I identify it. People have lost parts where somebody thought it was something like the extra kidney. Some people have 3 kidneys. You don't want it removed. It's working fine, especially if you're older and they've never found it. You don't want it removed. Anyway, afferent is a term that means coming into a point. So the kidney has a functional unit, and I'll put it over here, called the nephron. And maybe from some basic biology class, that rings a bell. The nephron is the functional unit of the kidney. And what brings blood to the nephron? The afferent arteriole. It's an arteriole that's bringing blood to that one structure. Okay? Then you could say when urine is formed, it leaves the kidney and travels down the tube known as the ureter that leads to the bladder. And it's fascinating, the anatomy of the ureter. It's not like a tube on like a motor has like a gas line. The ureter is very dynamic, full of smooth muscle, and it contracts, and when it contracts, it's called peristalsis. That's a general term in biology, you've heard it. Peristalsis is where you have a tube that moves in such a way by muscles that it moves something from here, there, and never back. Like your whole GI tract goes from your mouth to the anal opening, right? That's peristalsis. But urine is brought to the bladder by peristalsis, not pressure. And that's why if you have a full bladder, you can still put more urine in it, because it's muscle contraction squeezing urine into your bladder. We all know we have to empty that sometime, but you could wait another 5 minutes, right? But if it was like a tube full of just passive water, maybe you couldn't wait 5 minutes. So, but you see how we're doing this? And it's a science paragraph, it's a biology paragraph with these terms. Sometimes there's more than one way to use the term. My brain can handle it. I just read these things, and if it sounds like a science paragraph, boom, a lot of the points are gleaned. Let's say if there's 5 of these, there's going to be 20 points per paragraph. And I don't say this thing's worth 2 points, this is 2, this is 2. That's too complicated to keep track of. I read the paragraph and say, could this be found in a advanced high school biology book or a beginning freshman book in high school biology, college? Okay? And you upload those, they get scanned. Let's say you upload it and the scan comes back like doesn't get an acceptable mark. you can do it again. I don't have it limited to one submission. You got to be done by the deadline. But if you have a bad score, or you put one up and it's a good score, but I forgot to add something and I want to do it, submit another one. Because I'm only going to read the last one that's submitted.
Does it show what
You-
comes up as?
Your similarity score? Yeah, it will. It might not the moment you submit it. You got to be aware of that, because if it's busy with other people's submissions from this class, it's not going to talk to you right away. It's going to do them as it came in. It can't do more than one because it wants to know what the first one was. It's going to remember that and compare everybody else's to the first one, to the second, to the third, to the fourth. So you might submit something near the deadline, and it might be 10 minutes before it shows up with a score. Why? Because it was working on everybody else's. It's going to do them one at a time, so it stores that. Yes?
So you had said if we remembered that we want to add something more to a previous document that we had already put into it, is it going to compare that second copy to the first copy?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
No, because it knows it's you. Yeah, that's a good question. And I mean, that's a very good question. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to do my by memory. And of all the times, I've done this hundreds of times, when somebody resubmitted one to get a better score, similarity score, they were able to do it. So it's got to be programmed where in that one assignment, it's not going to fault you with multiple submissions. But that's an excellent question, because you can see how it could. But they're smart enough to program that but it knows that that's you. It's not somebody else's. But it's kind of neat because, there'll be a few people that want to minimize their effort and their knowledge. And I mean, don't ask me, I can't figure that out with the way the competitive world is. But I swear, the more you do yourself, the farther you'll go. I went to college 10 years. The best money I ever spent. And I paid out-of-state tuition.
So for the questions, how long of the time do we have before we have to submit?
Oh, you have weeks. You have a week. It'll show up on my website. The word. Well, I'll put them in. I'll put them in Word, and then when you submit them, I try to tell you to put them in PDF form. But I won't do PDF because some people have trouble with that. I'll submit it as Word in the on my website. So like, let's say here, someplace down here, there might be exam number 1. And you download that document, or you put it on your computer, and you can fill it in there. Then you'll save it, and then save it as a PDF, and then you upload that into Brightspace. But you'll have, let's say 5 days, whatever. It's not gonna be a time thing like some people do. Because those are hard to write. You've got to write a story. It's not fill in the blank or multiple choice. I mean, you've got to think about it. Because you've got to go back in your notes. What did we do about the kidneys in the lab? What did we do about kidneys here? Because I'm looking for you to gather everything. Because that's how you learn. Things are gathered. And all your knowledge about kidneys are in a place called the kidney domain. Or like all my knowledge about dogs is in this domain called dogs. And everything I learn goes in that domain, and then when I learn more, the domain gets bigger. It's like a basketball getting bigger. Because your new knowledge is always attached to the outer edge. Because there's always something more appropriate to learn, the next thing to learn. And see, that's what a tutor does. A tutor ascertains what you know, and then teaches you then the next layer. And there's a very famous educational psychologist, I can't remember his name right now, but somebody asked him, of all educational psychology, that's basically how people learn, what would you boil it down to? What would be the take-home message? And he said this: ascertain what the student knows and teach them accordingly. Ascertain what you know, like about kidneys. And if you don't know nothing, then we start low. If you know a lot, Then we start higher, but it's always that next layer you're working on. And that's what the trouble with a big class like this. Like say, when I talk about ovarian function, maybe some people have no idea. There's follicles, there's other structures, but other people have dissected them and worked some place in a lab, and they're up here, and it's like, okay, who do I teach? Do I teach here or do I teach here? Yeah, I've got to like kind of teach the same every semester, and for some people, they don't have to study ovaries very hard because they already know about it, right? So that's what the tests are going to be like. So fill in the paragraph I called. I invented those, and I'll tell you what, I know of no other way to pick a person's brain. Putting these random things in, but they're related, and to see how you do it, but try to make it like in a science book, not like a lot of your own personal things. You could slip in, yes, my dog had chronic renal failure, and we had to put it down as 3 months in because it's genetic, but you can do that as a little sidebar. You can't do it as the basic, because this is a basic physiology class with anatomy. So, you know, you're going to talk about 2 kidneys. Most animals have 2, but there are 3. And that's where that super word, I think I guess right here. Super is a prefix that means above. And if you have above normal, let me show you what that spells. So there's our super. And then when you use super, you don't have the hyphen. Drop the hyphen and combine it with something. And when you have the extra amount of something, it's called supernumerary. So people are born with supernumerary kidneys. There it is. And some have extra teeth, supernumerary teeth. Supernumerary nipples, yes, they exist. Supernumerary ureters. And here we are. There's 2 ureters there and 1 there. So there's an extra one. See, that's an extra kidney as well. See that? If you didn't know that happened, and you're a surgeon, and you go, oh, that must be the tumor, I'm taking it out. Always identify everything when you're in there, because it's going to fool you. But there's a perfect example. Well, look at this one here. Basically 3 kind of sub-kidneys, each one. Well, this is not the ureter. Do you know, this is the aorta, so that's the arteries. So that's not ureters. This is ureter because we lead to the kidney, or the bladder, I should say. Okay? But there are extra parts. Sometimes parts are missing too. You gotta be careful. I mean, most people have the right amount of parts. Sometimes there's low, sometimes there's high. You gotta be so careful. You've heard about those medical accidents where somebody goes in and is supposed to get their left leg removed and the right one's removed. You know, people are writing on their legs now. Not this one. Have you ever heard of that? And of course, unfortunately, there's a lot of medical mistakes. How many people die in the United States a year from medical mistakes? And this is where some people that just made it out of vet school or just made it out of medical school shouldn't be practicing, right? Is every vet good? Is every physician good? No, no, no. So medical mistakes. This would be human. Okay, da-da-da-da. Medical mistakes do happen. I'm looking for a number. Medical errors, 3rd leading cause of death. More than 250,000 people die every year because of medical mistakes. Okay, now that's a number that I wasn't going to guess that high. It depends on how you count it. The point is, there's a lot of misdiagnosis out there, and don't be afraid to say, good, that sounds good, I'm going to go home, and don't say it, but I'm going to get a second opinion. It's your body. But look at that number. That's crazy. More than 250,000 people die every year because of medical mistakes. Medical mistakes. I mean, for example, it's a very sad case that happened in Indy. Methodist Hospital in the NICU center, that all these they're premature babies. A nurse gave them heparin in a tube. If you ever see a tube that goes to the blood vessel, that tube has to have heparin in it. Otherwise it clots and then you have trouble and you got to put another one in, whatever. Heparin. So right, that's Heparin. Write that down. Heparin is an anticoagulant. So this nurse gave, like they always do, let's say 1 cc in the tube, in the catheter. Ends up being the bottle she had was 1,000 times more potent than it should have been. That leads to a bleeding disorder if you overdose on an anticoagulant. 2 or 3 babies died from that medical mistake, and 1 or 2 survived, but they never will be back to what they should have been. What happened was somebody put the wrong heparin concentration bottle into their cabinet. You know, everybody's got cabinets with the drugs. And when somebody came up from the hospital pharmacy, they put the bottle that was 1,000 times more potent than what they should have. And the nurse, if she would have been working in my lab, she wouldn't have done a mistake, because in my labs, when I had endocrinology lab, you check, you recheck, and you recheck. But she didn't check the bottle, because the concentration's on the bottle. She just assumed. And you know what happens when you assume, right? You make an ass out of you and me. She assumed, and I mean, that's the most tragic thing that can happen to a parent, right? But 250, I think that's a little high, but I guess if you look at that, that's, you know, I don't know. I always say at least 50,000, 60,000. I'm hoping it's closer to that than 250. But whenever you do something in a hospital, don't assume what they're doing is the correct thing. Like if the nurse comes in with a syringe and you're supposed to be getting some shot, say, what's in there? Tell me what's in there. And if you know what was supposed to be in there and it's not, you're saying, that's not mine. Oh, I read the wrong room, it's next door. Now some of the shots you'll get, maybe you were supposed to get a little heparin and you got some steroid. Well, you know, if it's a low dose, it's not going to, you know, do anything. But some of these things like the neonatal babies, that's 1,000 times the dose. And the thing is, after that accident, then they started making the labels different colors. Before that accident, all the labels were like, let's say, red and white, no matter the concentration. So they learned something from that. The pharmaceutical company did. Okay, if it's that concentrated, that's purple and white. So then the color is reflective of the concentration, which is better. You learn, but that's a high number. I mean, that's scary. Questions? I guess we're going to be done. Let's just call it good. If you have questions, come on up. Otherwise, I see you Thursday, right? No lab. Or you could do the reading, right? There's that reading. Feel free to do the reading. Yeah, just pass them this way. The surveys, pass them up this way. Put them on the end of a table. No name, finish it up. Thanks for listening to me. Gosh, there's a lot of bodies in this class, aren't there?
Yeah. Much different from scale 50 or classes.
Oh, yeah. A lot different.
I'm sorry. I know we don't have lab Wednesday, but I have a class at 11:30, and it's also like 20 minutes crazy in this. So is there any chance I can leave early for it?
For when there is lab,
Yeah.
you're saying? Oh yeah, we'll talk about that when we start labs. Because you're talking about like not tomorrow, but the next week we have lab. You have to go early or come late? I can't
I
remember.
have to go early.
Okay, yeah, we'll talk about it when the day comes,
Okay.
okay? Hi.
My name's Lexi. I
Lexi.
was given your information from Very Go.
Okay,
So I have a pet first aid and CPR. I'm an instructor. So I can teach people. And then he gave me your name. Are you in charge of the club? You were on my list of names he told me to reach out to, and I was like, oh, I'll see him tomorrow. So
okay, so you're talking about you can teach CPR, is that what you're saying?
first aid and CPR for pets.
Oh, I see, for
Yes.
pets, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be kind of neat to hear about. Are you in this class here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, maybe someday what we can do is have you give a little presentation. That'd be good for everybody to hear. Any particular animal you're best at, like dog
Just
or?
dog and cat.
Dog
is
and
all
cat,
I'm
yeah, okay.
legally allowed to.
Oh, okay, yeah, neat.
You get a 2-year certification.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to hear about it myself, so
Okay.
we'll do that sometime.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks for telling me about that.
Good afternoon, Professor. I just have a question. It's because I kind of like missed a little bit about the nephron. Like, I don't know.
The nephron.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me just show it to you so the nephron, whenever you hear the word functional unit,
Mhm.
that means there must be a lot of those in that organ.
Okay.
So nephron, there it is. So the nephron, I'll show you an image, it's always kind of like a snake.
Okay.
It's always like this. So
Oh,
like here's the nephron and here's one right here. This is like looking like a snake. See that?
Yes.
And that whole thing is called a nephron.
Okay.
And it's what makes urine.
Okay.
So whenever you say that's the functional unit, that means there's a lot of them in the kidney. You can't see them with the naked eye. You need a microscope.
Okay.
And it's making urine.
Oh, so it's basically inside the kidney.
Yeah. And we'll
Oh.
talk a little more about it. But it shows the red usually in a diagram means blood. So blood comes in here and then it's like a filter and then urine, the fluid comes out of the blood and makes urine, which they're depicting as yellow.
So basically, it's kind of like filters the blood, basically.
Yeah. The
Oh.
kidney filters blood to make urine.
Okay, got it. Thank you, Professor.
Okay.
I just wanted to introduce myself to you because I was sending you pictures this summer.
Now, how do you pronounce your name?
Kale.
Kale, K-A-L-E?
C-A-L.
Oh, yeah, C-A-L-E, yeah. Yeah, good, I was wondering about you. Yeah, those pictures are phenomenal. We have to do something about that atresia ani, because did the vet help you dissect that out? Or did you do it all yourself? With the blind ended?
I did like the cutting and she just like stood there and watched.
Yeah,
it.
good.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. That picture is like something you don't find really.
I took a ton of pictures.
Yeah, and we're gonna have to see, I want to see all of them. Because most people just take the outside surface, okay, atresia
Yeah.
ani, but they never show
That's
the
on
inside. And you've got it.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you. Yeah, we'll be talking more.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bree.
Mhm.
I have trouble hearing.